in full swing, and that is not.
Get all my frustrations and my camera out right now. Now we're recording.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our midweek devotional time.
Woo!
We've got Caleb in the studio and Les in the studio again. Great to see you, Leslie. How are you?
Nice to see you. I'm doing well, thank you. Missing you guys, but doing great.
Yes.
We miss you too.
We miss you. Even though I'm getting used to this whole, new you right now.
Nice. Hey, today we're going to be in Luke chapter 17. So if you've got your phone or your Bible, go ahead and open that up. I want to make sure we're there. I don't want to spring it on you later. And as you're turning there, I'm going to tell you then what your question of the day, QOD, question of the day is, all right?
Oh, my favorite part.
Which is funny, the irony of the question of the day based on what you said just moments ago.
Oh boy.
It's perfect, because you basically have let us know what it is already. So the question of the day is, what is one of your biggest pet peeves? What's one of your biggest pet peeves? Caleb, do you want to start?
Well, right now in this is my camera, because I am a quality nut. Like, if a video is not in super high definition and the quality is excellent, then I'm just not going to watch it. And so right now we're having lots of technical issues, well, mainly just audio issues, and it's bugging me right now. And so I may seem a little flustered, and that's because I might be, but it's okay.
Take a deep breath. Breathe in through your nose. No, in through your nose. Out through your mouth. All right. You feeling better?
A little bit, yes.
Okay, good. All right, Les, what's one of your biggest pet peeves?
Well, I think you guys probably know the answer to this already. I should probably just let you guys tell it, because I think you know what my biggest pet peeve is. But are you going to say it?
I don't.
Chewing gum.
Oh, yeah, that one too.
Okay.
But my one of my biggest pet peeves is that when I go to the grocery store, I don't want the cashiers to talk about what I'm buying. I don't want them to have an opinion about it, or like, oh, that I saw that and wasn't thinking that was going to be very good, or oh, you're going to wear that, or so I want to check out. I want to be friendly. I want to have a conversation with them, but I don't want it to be about the items that I'm buying.
Right.
And that not too long ago I went to the grocery store, and that happened to me. But it happened that instead of talking about it, the cashier smelled my item that I was buying, and that just did not go over well for me.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest pet peeve.
There's probably a lot of people out here watching who can relate to that. And if it wasn't their biggest pet peeve, it probably is now, because you refreshed the memory on it. Yeah, that's disturbing. Just scan the items. All right, well, my biggest pet peeve, since you guys, I'm sure, are curious, is, and I've tried to think of many of them, but my biggest one, by far, is ungratefulness. I cannot stand people being ungrateful. And I'm going to throw myself in that category too, because I catch myself doing it. And whenever I find myself being ungrateful, I get so angry with myself. Like I really feel really down, because I'm like, I did it. The one thing. So, and I don't know if it's because growing up the way I was raised, if it's the way my mom had instilled in me to be grateful and thankful for the things that we do have. But yeah, I just, when people have been showered with blessings, or whoever, and they've been given a lot of things, and it doesn't matter to them, like there's no, like, at the very least say thank you, right? At the very least, go that simple step of being thankful for what you have. And sometimes we find ourselves complaining for the blessings that we have, right? And that just drives me nuts. It does. It just drives me crazy. But doesn't drive me as crazy as Caleb and his audio difficulties. But it's close, so it's dangerous for this world. We're going to read a story today about ungratefulness. And we're going to think about how we can apply that to where we find ourselves still in quarantine, as we've been doing this now for many weeks. So in Luke chapter 17, we're going to be reading verses 11 down through 19. And it actually ties into our study right now of Got Faith. So we'll get to that later. But here's how we'll divide it up today. Leslie, if you'll read Luke 17, verses 11 through 14, that'd be great.
Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed.
All right, thank you. And now, Caleb, if you'll read 15 down through 19.
Okay. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well."
Awesome. Thank you. So we have just a few verses about an interaction of 10 men interacting with Jesus. And in those short verses that we have, from 11 down to 19, there is a humongous story or a humongous lesson for us all to learn when it comes to being grateful. So as you look at this, I mean, what's your first reaction when you read these verses again? Because you guys are, I'm sure, familiar with this. Maybe not everyone watching is, but you guys are familiar with this passage. What jumps out to you when you read these verses again?
Les, you want to go first?
I guess the thing that jumps out at me, that, all they had to do was ask, and they knew to ask, but then after they did that, they just then went about their business. They only one of them came back. So somehow they knew, but what they were supposed to do, but then the rest of it wasn't clear to them what they should do after that. Okay. And maybe they just forgot, and then maybe they were just so excited. I'm not sure what it was, but I think that, I'm like that sometimes too. I get caught up in the moment and forget what the next thing I was supposed to do was.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of going along with what Leslie said, I love that Jesus, when he does a lot of his miracles, he usually lays his hands on people. But in this, that's not really stated, where it's kind of like Jesus just tells them, go show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. And so it's kind of cool to see how Jesus is so powerful, that he doesn't even have to lay a hand, in a sense. Not to say that he wouldn't have done that to these guys, because we do have accounts of him laying hands on people with leprosy, I believe. And but this is just one of those moments where Jesus just tells them, yeah, just go, like Leslie said, go about your business, and they were cleansed. So that's kind of cool to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Both those things that you guys mentioned are so true. And I was going to ask, why do you think it is sometimes, or what do you think it would have been for these 10 men that could have distracted them, or at least 9 of them, from coming back to thanking Jesus? What was it? And Leslie mentioned one of them. Maybe they just were so excited because in this situation, having leprosy, that was going to be their lot in life. There wasn't going to be a cure for them, and they find themselves on the fringe of society, outcasts, which is why we see at the beginning they're crying out to Jesus. It says from a distance. They can't even come close to Jesus. In fact, in this time frame, they would have had to alert anyone coming near them that they had this disease, that they were unclean. And so, but in their desperation, they recognize Jesus, first of all. I see that. It's like they see Jesus, like, Jesus, have pity on us. And he's like, yeah, go. So another thing I've seen here, it's pretty interesting, is what would have happened, I wonder, when Jesus says, now go show yourselves to the priest. What if they just said, that's not good enough for me. I don't want to do that. They say, I'm not gonna go. And 8 of them go, I mean, it's pretty clear that Jesus gives them some instruction. And apparently, all 10 of them followed it, right? And we know from Jesus' words at the end that all 10 of them were cleansed, right? So that's pretty neat too. We see that Jesus doesn't just heal them. I mean, he could have. And that's what I like about Jesus' miracles. If we look at all of his miracles, there's not any of them that are really like completely identical. He handles them in different ways so that he demonstrates who he is. And he doesn't make mistakes either. He does them all intentionally. So, anyway, what else jumps out at you, even if you know how this, kind of the points that we look at and focus on here, what is it that makes this story of being grateful and also being ungrateful very unique, especially when we get towards the end?
Well, I think just that the Samaritan is the one that came back and threw himself at Jesus's feet. And so sometimes it just reminds me that sometimes we can be so familiar with something that I think that's why we forget to give thanks. It's an expected thing. We're familiar with it, and he wasn't. And so it's just such a great reminder that we can't ever get comfortable with where we're at in our faith, that we always need to be reminded of what an amazing God we serve.
Right. And for those people who are watching who may not know, like, well, what's this? What's it mean? This a Samaritan came back. Why does that matter? You got either one? Do you want to clear that up a little bit for us?
Yeah. So Samaritans were known to be sort of the enemies of the Jewish people. Like, they did not get along at all. And so it was, in that time frame, it was very, there was a very real division, I guess you could say, or distance, to where if you were from a Jewish background, you did not acknowledge yourself with Samaritans. And so, yeah, that's definitely a huge part of this story. And there's other stories as well of Jesus still kind of breaking that boundary, or breaking that wall, in a sense, where he knows that there's this kind of history between these two people groups, but yet he just says, hey, just I don't care, just follow me, and he's willing to still heal people even though they kind of come from this other background, I guess you could say.
Yeah, thanks for summing that up. It's important that we understand that in the story, because sometimes we think we know these things, or maybe they're brand new to us. I mean, we're watching this and I don't know what a Samaritan is, or why it would matter that Jesus would reference it. But he does, and that's kind of the culminating point that I want to focus in on here, as we're going to wrap this up here soon, is the idea that the Samaritan came back and thanked Jesus, right? Now, Jesus is Jewish. The implication of this point in history is that the other 9 were Jewish. And one thing that's interesting is, like, their desperation, the difficulty they found themselves in, it naturally broke down the social barrier, because they all now had something in common: leprosy. And so sometimes tragedy, sometimes difficulty creates this the barriers to dissolve, because people want to associate with those they can be around, people who are familiar with their situation. We find ourselves in this pandemic. I think one of the reasons many people are open to God right now is a lot of the social norms have been dissolved, because we're all in the same desperate situation. But what's interesting, when Jesus points out the Samaritan coming back, it's like the script has been flipped. Like, based on what they would have thought as a normal situation, it would have been the other 9 coming back and the Samaritan going, well, I don't care because I don't associate or whatever. But we see this. So, for my thought when I think about myself, and I'm going to have to examine myself in these situations, in being grateful. I believe as Christians, those who say, I am a follower of Christ, that we should be the first ones to be grateful in all situations, as we're told in Scripture. That when we receive blessings, that we're grateful for not just who they came from, or who helped us, who blessed us with that, but also being thankful to God for those people in our lives. But we should be, what I say, champions of gratefulness. So what do you guys think? Anything?
We're so speechless by the wise words of wisdom.
Grateful in all circumstances, just grateful all the time. Yes, and we should be able to see the joy in everything that is happening around us, because what you said is so true. We are all suffering in this crisis, in this pandemic together, and so we need to show that we believe what we confess and profess to be, and that is that Jesus is our joy. And so I try to remember that regularly. Some of the things that happen to me, I think about, gosh, what if I get sick from something different than the virus? What if I need a dentist? And so I'm just thankful that I can be healthy right now, and I can have joy in that. And sometimes we just forget that because we're sad about not being able to have contact with people. But yet I want to be joyful that I can be at home and I can be safe and I can be healthy.
Right.
So yes.
Yeah, and for me personally, it's the thing that I feel that I've been definitely grateful for right now is, I've definitely appreciated you guys, especially throughout this time, and just, even though that I'm kind of far from my home, which ironically I'm wearing my Ohio Represent t-shirt today, and even though I'm far from my hometown and my family and stuff, it's like, I'm still so blessed to be here, and still so blessed to be living with you guys, and the other thing too, it's, one thing that stuck out to me is, I'll try to be quick, but I think about what if this happened, way back in the day, before we had technology like this, where we can tune Leslie in, and we have the technology where we can record this video right now and get it out there. It's like, man, like, what would we be doing? But again, just to think of the technology that we do have, that we can still stay in touch. Yeah, it might not still be what we want or the same thing, of course, but, I'm still able to call people, and I'm still able to FaceTime people, and I'm still able to, stay in touch with the things that we still have and the things that still work, hopefully, today.
Well, here's the thing I'm thankful for. Even in the times that I'm ungrateful, Jesus is still there for me. Because Jesus didn't, give leprosy back to the 9 who didn't come and say thanks, right? Those men still received the cleansing that Jesus had to offer. But we do get to hear the story of this one who came back and said thanks. So my challenge to myself and all of us is just, let's be champions of gratefulness. So, all right.
I like that.
All right. Well, until next time, this is Leslie and Caleb and myself signing off, saying, don't forget to be Jesus strong.
I don't got my jacket today.
I got my bracelets on. Jesus strong.
There you go.
All
Don't
right.
forget to be Jesus strong.